This is FYI on your TV, brought to you by Hometown News. I'm Kathy Botham. I've got my history teacher back, Doug Phillips. Mr. Phillips, how are you today?
I'm fine, and I'm very honored to be sitting not only to a Citizen of the Year, but to one of the remarkable women of Smiths Falls.
Thank
An
you.
honor well deserved, I must say.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now we're here to talk today about somebody from Smiths Falls again.
Yep.
I'm a little familiar with them, so I
Yeah.
did my homework,
Right,
and I'm
right.
ready.
You're very good at doing your homework.
Yeah, now I am, aren't I? We're going to talk about Kenneth Spooner.
Yeah.
He's from Smiths Falls.
Yes, he is. Before I talk about Ken Spooner, I'd like to talk about the award that he was given as a result of his heroic activity. It was called the George Cross. And the George Cross was created in 1940. And it was awarded to, for an act of the greatest heroism or of the most conspicuous courage in circumstances of extreme danger. In the British ranking of awards, it is the equivalent, it is the same level as the Victoria Cross. Now, many people are familiar with the Victoria Cross, which is awarded for valor in battle. The George Cross is awarded for similar acts of heroism, but not in battle, in different circumstances. 10 Canadians, only 10, have received the George Cross. 3 of those recipients of the George Cross, they originally were awarded another honor, and in 1971, some of these other honors, there was an Albert Medal, it was called, and some Empire Gallantry Award. They were converted to a George Cross. So 10 Canadians, 3 were converted from an earlier, they were people who were awarded these medals during the First World War, and one was a young woman who was awarded the Albert Medal in 1916, but those were converted to the George Cross in 1971. During World War II, 7 members, 7 Canadians were awarded the George Cross. 3 of them were members of the Canadian Army. Their names were James Hendry, John Rennie, and John Patton. And 4 members of the Royal Canadian Air Force were awarded the George Cross. The person who was awarded the George Cross was a man named Carl Gravel. And Carl Gravel, his plane has crashed, and he was very badly injured. He managed to come out of the plane, but he went back into the plane to rescue the pilot. Unfortunately, he died of his injuries. A very heroic act. He was very badly injured, but he wanted to go back in and try and save the pilot. The third member was a man named Dwight Ross, and he was involved in a similar situation. I won't go into details, but he survived, but he lost a hand in his act of heroism. And the fourth person was a man named Roderick Gray. And Roderick Gray, his plane had crashed in the ocean. He was very badly injured, but he managed to inflate a dinghy, so it only held 2 people, and he rescued 2 of his people in the plane, and he got them in the dinghy, and he held on to the side of the dinghy. He knew it wouldn't support 3 people, so he saved the other 2 people, and during the night he died. Now, the second person who was awarded the George Cross was Ken Spooner from Smiths Falls. And you might know some of the details. I don't know much about Ken Spooner's personality. I just know the details that I read. I know that other people locally, are probably much more competent and much better to be able to talk about him as a person. But Ken Spooner, he was born in Smiths Falls in 1922. He was the son of Mr. and Mrs. Gerald Spooner. He was educated in local public schools and the Smiths Falls Collegiate. He was a member of the Trinity United Church. He was employed in the Divisional Engineer's Office of the CPR before enlisting in the RCAF in July 1942. In May 1943, 10 days before his 21st birthday, he was only 20 years old.
So young.
Yes, so young. And 6 weeks before he was to graduate from his course at an observer school in London, Ontario, he was on an instructional flight in an Avro Anson trainer as a student navigator. Shortly after the plane took off, the pilot, a man named Sergeant Nilsson from Nova Scotia, he collapsed over the controls. There were 3 other people in the plane. There was Ken Spooner, Sergeant Brown, a J.A. Curtis, and an R.H. Bailey. And they were behind the pilot. And what to do? Well, Ken Spooner rushed forward, and the pilot actually recovered. He came back. He fainted. He didn't die of the controls. He fainted. But when he came to, he froze. Mm. He couldn't fly the plane. So Ken Spooner got the pilot off a seat and tried to take control of the plane. He was 20 years old. He had absolutely no experience in flying a plane, and he tried to pilot the plane to give the other people in the plane a chance to leave, to jump out. And the citation that was accompanied his George Cross reads, "The airman, a student navigator with no pilot training, displayed great courage, resolution, and unselfishness in the face of harassing circumstances when the pilot of the aircraft fainted at the controls. While other crew members were vainly trying to remove him from his seat, he temporarily regained consciousness and froze at the controls, causing the aircraft to lose altitude rapidly. Immediately after the pilot became indisposed, LAC Spooner, with extreme coolness and courage, assumed charge, ordered the remainder of the crew to bail out while he took over the controls and endeavored to keep the aircraft at a safe height. 3 members of the crew bailed out as instructed, and shortly after the aircraft crashed into Lake Erie, carrying the unconscious pilot and LAC Spooner to their death. The crash occurred approximately 1 hour after the pilot had lost control. This airman, with complete disregard for his personal safety and in conformity with the highest tradition of the service, sacrificed his life in order to save the lives of his comrades." And I just realized recently that there was a sergeant in the plane who was a superior officer to Ken Spooner. And one might expect the sergeant to take control. But I think I mentioned this to you. You can't help read about the stories of Roderick Gray or Dwight Ross or Ken Spooner or these other people without thinking, how would I have reacted in that situation?
At 20 years old.
At 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I can say with some certainty, I don't think I could have done that. And it's amazing that he was able to do that.
He knew he was going to give his own life to save the others at that age. 3
of them managed to get out of the plane. However, they were flying too low, and one of the people died. He drowned in Lake Erie. I guess somebody said they were too close to the water, and he didn't survive the jump. But of course, it was several days before they found his body, and a funeral was held in Smiths Falls with full Air Force honors being accorded. In the United Church in town, there's a plaque. As you go up the stairs, there's a plaque on the wall honoring Ken Spooner. He's buried in Hillcrest Cemetery. And the George Cross was posthumously awarded later on that year in December 1943. And the George Cross is now in the possession of the National Canadian War Museum in Ottawa. It was purchased in 1988. After the war, in 1949, the local public school board built a new school because of the baby boom, and they named it after Ken Spooner. It was called Spooner Public School. It was around for a long time. It was built and named by the Smiths Falls Public School Board. When the Lanark County Board took over, the name stayed the same. When the Upper Canada Board took over, the name stayed the same. And then when the Upper Canada Board had no use for that, they had to turn it over to the other publicly supported board that changed the name. So the name Ken Spooner, publicly anyways, has been lost in Smiths Falls, and I think that's too bad because he's a genuine hero.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Now, in October 2017, the RCAF Hall that was on Abbott Street
Yes.
named the hall after him,
Yes,
too.
yes,
So
yeah.
that hall is no longer,
Yes,
so I don't know whether that name transferred
Right.
to their new hall. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
And I believe there was a hallway at Chimo called the Kenneth Spooner Hallway. if
Or
I'm
was
not
it the library was named
The
after?
library,
Yeah,
maybe it was the library,
Yeah, the
yes.
library's named after. You're right,
Yeah.
I know, but it's not the same.
know.
It's not the same as
Absolutely.
a public, I'm not saying it's a public recognition. It's
Yes.
Interestingly enough, George Cross is still being awarded. It's not only can it be awarded to individuals, but it can be awarded to groups of people. And Queen Elizabeth, she awarded the George Cross to members of the National Health Service in Great Britain for their work in combating the COVID pandemic a few years ago. And another person that was awarded the George Cross was a lady named Violet Szabo. And she was a member of the SOE, the Special Operations Executive, which was like a clandestine group of people who went behind enemy lines during World War II. And she was captured and tortured and died. And she was awarded the George Cross. And a movie was made of her life.
Wow.
You know, so, and you look up Violet Szabo and you see all kinds of recognitions of her in various parts of where she lived in England. So. It'd be nice if more people knew about Ken Spooner.
Absolutely,
and what he did.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I do know one lady, I believe it's his cousin, Marguerite Cameron,
Yes,
still
yeah,
lives in
nice.
here in Smith
Yeah,
Falls.
yeah.
See her walking all the time, lovely lady.
Yes.
People may remember her from working at Phillips Jewelry, so
Right, yeah,
I remember her being there in October
Yeah,
2017.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yes, absolutely. We need to remember, and even if we just do things like this.
Well, it's,
you know?
it's a drop in a bucket.
Absolutely, it's a start, it's a start, it's a
Yeah,
start,
yeah,
for sure,
yeah,
for
yeah.
sure.
I'm sure the town has many other things on their mind, but it would be nice if they could come up with a more public recognition of Ken Spooner's heroism.
Oh, well, maybe we'll have to work on that one.
Well, okay.
We could do that, we could do that.
Okay.
Wow, this is amazing. You just you remember so much things from Smith Falls, and I mean, history must be you love history, but
Yeah.
just to be able to remember stuff from Smith Falls. Your book from Frost and Wood, how is that going? I saw you did a presentation.
Well, it's doing very well.
Yes.
I spoke last week at the First Lions Club, and I'm speaking at the Lanark County Genealogical Society on April the 6th. And I have been invited to speak at the Perth Probus Club later on this year in the fall. I enjoyed it very much. I enjoyed talking about it very much. I'm very pleased with the sales, but more important, I'm very pleased with the feedback I've gotten.
Yes.
I just heard yesterday from somebody whose son now lives in Nova Scotia, and Frost and Wood had a very strong presence in the Maritime Provinces. And I heard from his mother secondhand that he really enjoys the books, and he enjoys trying to locate some Frost and Wood stuff that's left there. And I did get, in my research for my book, I did get some support, you know, it was great support from a digital museum in Nova Scotia. So yeah, I'm very pleased with it. It's doing very well.
So how do people get it if they like it?
Well, right now it's at Tom's Locksmithing. It's at Early's Books. Although I have to check. The last time I was in there, they were down. I might have to go back in there and see if they want some more. The Heritage Museum. They've been very strong promoters of the book, and well, and so was Tom Clark. Tom Clark's been amazing. They can get it from me. Well, I had it on eBay for a short time, but the sales I made on eBay were local. So, you know,
Might as well stay local.
you know,
Yes.
stay local. And you know, the eBay takes quite a chunk when you sell it there. So there are 3 local sources right now. I don't have it. Well, when I talk, I do take along some copies of the book, and I do sell some copies when I talk. So I'm getting down to the end of my first printing. So I don't know if, depends how it goes. I don't know if I'm going to have a second printing out, maybe later on this year. I think I might. I think I might have to. Yeah.
I think you might have to
Yeah,
too.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been very popular, and the feedback has been, for me, the best part.
Excellent, excellent.
Okay.
Well, I thank you very much for joining
Okay.
us today, Mr. Phillips.
Yeah.
I have to call you Mr. Phillips, because my mother would be telling me it's Mr. Phillips, not
Yeah,
Doug
that's right,
Phillips.
that's right,
My
yeah.
history teacher. Thank
Yeah.
you for joining us today and telling us more about Ken Spooner.
All right.